then. Cool. What a piano. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to World Piano Day and continuing the coverage here on Miller's Music and their Miller's Live sessions. My name's Robin Phillips and I am a jazz pianist, and I'm here today to do a little session on improvising, because it's an incredible thing and something that all musicians love to do and would love to be able to do, but for some people it can seem real, black magic. And so I thought I'd give you a little bit of an insight and just start getting us into what improvising is, and hopefully you can start discovering more about improvising yourself. And keep in touch and throw some stuff in the comments and we'll have a look at those afterwards. So what is improvising? Because ultimately what we're trying to do is compose music in the moment to communicate something, a feeling, an expression, a message, and also share how we're feeling. That's the whole point about improvising, is it's not prepared. So everything impacts on what you're going to do and talking through your instrument. It's easy to say that, of course. Now, the purest form of improvising, and some of the masters did this, would have been hearing in your mind's ear what you want to play and just having the ability to play it. And while some people can do that, actually the best way to have control and to be able to improvise at will is to really know your technique. And it all comes from stuff that us pianists do all the time. Arpeggios, scales, they really give us insight and the skills that we can use to improvise. So let's get into that a little bit. The most important thing you want to understand about is that we have to understand what harmony is. And by understanding harmony, we can get into the improvising. So here's how music works. We have rhythm, the beat. Then we have the harmony. And the harmony is the structure beneath the song. So you have your song or your tune, and that'll be the melody. And then beneath it, you've got the harmony, the chords. And it's by understanding the harmony, what chords are, what they mean, and what information they can give you, that's going to give you all the information for your soloing. So, what is, let's just get into this a little bit. So, there's the simplest way to do this. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go back to the blues, because the blues, and you might say, why do people always go back to the blues when they start talking about improvising? Because the blues is the real foundation and the beginnings of one of the most improvised arts on the planet, which is jazz, of course. And by looking at it, we can really see a simple way into improvising. So I'm just going to jump over to this board, and I'm just going to give you a bit of insight in case you're saying to me, okay, Robin, it's all well and good you say what's the blues, but what is it? Here we've got 12 bars. Very simply, a bar of music, 4 beats per bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the blues, even though it's very simple, it sort of sends us off in a little bit of a dodgy tangent, because we are talking about, whatever the chord is, we're talking about 7 chords, dominant 7 chords, which I'll get back to in a minute. But all the chords in blues, right at the beginning, were dominant 7 chords. That's a chord with a flattened 7th. So, another important thing about learning to improvise is to try and think in numbers rather than specific chords. So, here's what I'm going to do, just going to show you. The blues starts on the 1 chord, and we'll use Roman numerals for that. It starts on the 1 chord, and that is, as we've said, It's a dominant 7 chord. It's a chord with a flattened 7th. And it does it for 4 bars. That just means do the same thing again. Then on bar 5, we get 2 bars of the 4 chord. Now, if we're in the key of C, let's say, blues in C, this would be a C7 chord, 2 bars of the 4 chord. What's the 4th note of C major? F. So we've got F7. Then we go back to the 1 chord again. And these are the real basics, getting right back to it, will be what we call a 5-4 blues. So we're going to go to the 5 chord, and then the 4 chord, and then back to the 1 again. Okay? 12 bar blues, the blues. So this is what I'm going to talk about over at the piano, okay? Now what's interesting about this, just before I leave, it's a little bit of a door to get into it. This is how the blues started off, really simply. But actually, musicians have been responsible for developing this art. And musicians get bored and they look for shortcuts in between chords and they look for things to make it a bit more interesting. And before you know it, you start throwing in more chords in the middle. Go to the 4 on the 2nd bar, then back to the 1 again. Then you can even go 4. You could even end up, you don't need to know this, but we could go sharp 4 diminished up to the 5 and then up to the 6. And then before going to the major change, which is the 2-5, 2-5-1. 2-5-1. This is just musicians developing what started off as a very basic structure, and it got more and more developed as time goes by. When they changed, maybe we'll do this on the next masterclass, 2-5-1s in jazz. When they changed this 5-4 blues to the 2-5, and by 2 we mean the 2nd chord, the minor 7, and the 5, the dominant 7. When they changed to that, the whole world blew up, and so much of jazz standards, tunes from the theatre world, Tim Panelli, the songbook, 2-5-1 become very important. So what are we talking about when we talk about that stuff, okay? Let's get into it quickly. So, playing this beautiful Bechstein as the B212, I think, isn't it, team? Is that right? Yeah. That's right. One of the nicest pianos I've ever played. It's just gorgeous. Right, here we go. A chord, harmony, and it's what goes under the music. This is a C major chord. Let's say we're in C blues, okay? C major. Now, if we flatten the 7th note of C major scale, flatten it, gives us C7. And this is a C dominant 7. The chord of the blues. And all the chords of the blues are 7 chords. Now, I know if you've developed a little bit of your harmony understanding, you might be saying, but Robin, I've learned that dominant 7 chords are 5 chords, and they're not 1 chord. Don't worry about that, because at the blues, everything's a 7 chord. And actually, that's how you recognise the blues. If you're playing a piece of music, follows that 12-bar structure, and they're all dominant 7 chords, you can think, the blues. So, 7 chords. Now, the simplest way to improvise, like I said before, is just if you could just hear what you want to play, and you knew how to play that line. If you wanted to, go, if you wanted to do that and you knew, that would be great. But we can't all do that. So here's the simplest thing you can look for when you're improvising, is to look for a scale or something that will take you across the whole piece. Okay, so let's just for a minute, let's go, say we're playing a piece in the key of C major. Okay? All the chords will come from the key of C. So as long as I play a C major scale, it's all going to fit in, no matter what the harmony does, as long as the harmony stays inside. Okay, so that was just me improvising using the C major scale, even though there was different harmony going on, just playing a line. That's what some of the greatest jazzers, actually, even though they're very developed, they try to get simpler again and play single lines over the top of it. All right, so that's the simplest thing you could do. You want to improvise over a piece, look what key it's in, and of course our key signatures, we know what a key signature is from our scale knowledge. We practice our scales. And that actually, the scale is the key of a piece in the key of C, a piece using notes from the scale of C, right? So therefore, you could improvise using the scale of C. Marvellous, isn't it? Lovely, it worked. So that's your simplest thing. Now, the blues is a similar thing. What we want to look for is one scale that will fit over that. We can't play a major scale, of course, because I've already said all the chords in the blues are 7 chords, dominant 7s. So, what's a scale that can work over these 7th chords? Well, I know you're all shouting it at the screen already, aren't you? It's the blues scale, man, just play the blues scale. You're absolutely right, the blues scale. The 1, the flat 3, the 4, the flat 5, 5, the flat 7. And you've heard it a million times. What's great about playing the blues and starting to improvise using the blues is that you can just use that blues scale. C blues scale across the whole thing. Now here's why it's interesting and why it works, because it would get really boring, you'd think, wouldn't it? Because the harmony, the floor underneath, is going to change, as we've said. So we'll start with the 1 chord. Here's the 1 chord. We can use the blues scale. Now because after 4 bars, the harmony is going to change, so the 4, but we're going to keep playing the same scale. So now we've got this thing where the scale has stayed the same, but the harmony has changed, giving it a point of difference. Listen. That's 3 bars. Here we go to 4 chords, but keep the same scale. Back to the 1 chord again. Now we're coming to the 5/4 bit. That's it, you know. It's the blues scale works over the blues. That's one scale that works over all the different harmony. And the reason it works, as I said, is because the scale stays the same, but the harmony shifts. All right, so that's your first step. I'm going to play a solo now, just 12 bars of a solo, only using the blues scale. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Twice in that, but mostly only using the blues scale. Okay, so that's your first step. Can you find a scale, either the key of the piece, or if you're in the blues scale, that will go over the top of all the harmony? That's great. Now, another thing, the next step up from that is to look at using the chords. Okay, now chords and harmony, as I keep going back to, is the code. When you see a chord in a piece of music, multiple notes creating the foundation of the music, that's giving you all the information that you need, because there's a scale that fits every chord. And now we're talking about modes. Okay, so you've probably heard that word before. What is a mode? Well, a mode is just a type of scale that's going to fit a particular chord. And as a jazz musician, what you're looking for is to understand. So when you see a chord, let's see, we see a minor 7 chord, we know we can play a scale that fits it. And this is called playing the changes. So you know the chords of the piece and you learn to play the right scale that fits it. But there's a shortcut to get quicker at this, and before you really start digging into the modes, playing the changes. And that is to use your chord tone knowledge. Okay? So let's look at this. We've got the chord C7, the 1 chord in the blues. Now, you know what a chord is, because if you practice arpeggios at piano, play all of those notes together, and it gives us the chord, the 1, the 3, the 5. And this is, of course, is very important, especially if we use a 4-note chord, the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7. That gives us so much information. It tells us, is it a major third? Is it a minor third? Is it a major 7? Or is it a dominant 7? Or a minor 7? It's important because chords tell us, is the piece finished, home? Or is it moving on, like a minor 7? It's a very moving chord. Or a dominant 7, sort of a bit of conflict. Conflict between that third and that 7 needs resolving. Alright, so the chord tells us a lot. And your first step, if you're playing a piece of music, maybe the chord only lasts a few beats, or just a bar, your first step should always be, look at the chord tones. Here we go. Now that way what's going to happen is our improvising is going to change with the harmony changing. So that's going to give us a more inside sound than maybe that we have with the blues. Here we go, C7, and I'm just going to play the chord tones. So in C7, the chord tones, C, E, G, B flat. F7, F, A, C, E flat, so that's flat 7. And the 5 chord in C, G7, G, B, D, F. Now we call it G7, but what we're not, the unspoken bit is it's a flattened 7th. It's all code in music, you just have to know the secrets to it. So I'm going to play these chords, and I'm only going to use the chord tones. Okay, chord tones. So your first step, look for one scale that can get you across a number of bars or that can get you across a whole piece if you can. The second step, if you've got a chord, look at your chord tones. And there's a simple way to develop that as well, and that's called chromatic approach notes. Take your chord tones, so in C, but you can approach your first note by coming from a semitone below or a semitone above. And that is the simplest way to really start getting a bit of cool sound to your improvising. Chromatic approach, and that can be developed into enclosures. You can add a few notes before your chord. You know, those little ba-doo-da-doo-da-dee-dee-dee. So still thinking chord tones, just using the chords. Keeps you away from all those slightly dangerous notes. Okay, now let's look at, just for the blues, keep it simple, but of course it's a lifetime of study. I'm going to talk about the scale, the mode that goes with a chord. C7. And it's just like the chord gives us all the information. C7 is a C chord with a flat 7, right? So it's a C scale with a flattened 7. Not going to go into the whole 5 chord of a different key thing today. It's not what we're here for. We'll get into that in future. So we can now, if we want to, this is like the 3rd level of development, we could play the scale that fits that chord. And then as the chord changes, the scale that we use is going to change. Okay, so that means that the solo is going to shift, but it's still going to stay quite inside because it's fitting the chord. What we do as we develop as jazz musicians is we look for that tension and release. So we might choose to play something that's outside of the chord, just for that bit of tension. Tritone substitutions, that sort of thing. Out, in, right? Out, in. Out, in. Yeah? But start off just by looking at the scale, the mode that fits your harmony. So I'm just going to play the same changes, 1, 4, 1, 5, 4, 1. This time using the scale that goes with it, and it opens up the door a little bit. Here we go. To the 4 chord. Okay, you can hear that was inside, playing the changes. Now, one more little tip trick I'll give you today, because we're flying, aren't we? I've been going for ages. Sorry, guys. And the one last thing, pentatonic scales, they can really save you. They're an amazing thing. A 5-note scale. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Keeps you away from the danger notes. Try it sometime. Try doing a scale only using the pentatonic scale. The 1, the 2, the 3, the 5 and the 6. Okay, pentatonic scale. What we talked about, the blues scale, works across all the blues where the harmony changes underneath. We talked about playing the chord tones. Just keep within the chord notes. We talked about the pentatonic scale, the 5-note scale. Nice and simple, keeps away from any dangerous notes. And then we've talked about modes, the scale that fits the chord. So the Mixolydian scale is what it's called, fits the dominant 7 chord. So that's a major scale with a flattened 7. So they all give you a certain sound. Here's the blues scale, chord chord tones, 5-note pentatonic scale, and then the mode that fits in. More notes. Okay, but don't forget, whatever knowledge you've got, you don't want to get too obsessed with all the different notes because you're still trying to tell a story. Tension and release. Say something in the moment. I'll give you a little trick as well. You want to make your solos sound much better? Stay away from the one. Stay away from the... You're in C. So many people will start a solo like this while they decide where they're going. Just start on any other note apart from the one. It's going to make things way easier. And then Herbie Hancock would even say, as Miles said to him, stay away from the 3s and the 7s as well. But again, let's get the basics down. Last thing I'm going to say about improvising today, and hey, Instagrammers, how you doing? Sorry I haven't said hello to you yet. Good to see you over there. Is you can mix and match these. Practice them individually, blues scale, pentatonic scale, chord tones, and modes. But you can match them, mix them all up. And that's what I do if I'm soloing over a piece. Here's the blues. And of course, if you mix up the Mixolydian scale with the blues scale and the pentatonic, lots of overlapping notes there, gives you loads and loads to choose from. So I think I'm going to finish off by soloing on the blues using the blues, chord tones, and the Mixolydian scale. And I'll leave it at that. So just want to say thanks so much to Miller's Music for having me before I play this solo, just to demonstrate. It is World Piano Day. Happy Piano Day, everyone. Playing this beautiful Bechstein B212 at Miller's Live. Don't forget to check out the new millersmusic.co.uk website. Looks fantastic, great deals. And if you need any help about anything, get in touch with the team here. They're great. So here we go. Here's a blues solo using exactly what I've just taught you. Drop us a comment, hit some likes, hit some shares, and I'll see you soon. Cheers. There it is, the blues.